What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Just Long Around Podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about basically, like, we did a podcast a few weeks ago about a woman who got pulled over in, what was it, Lower Merion. She got pulled out, I guess, at gunpoint, taser point, a little bit of both. And a bystander filmed it. And we were talking about it a few podcasts ago. And there's been some updates in that case that we kind of wanted to go over. We will provide a description in the link with the video and all the information that we're talking about today. There's a 6 ABC article that was released, and it basically saying that they're investigating it, or they investigated it. They're looking for who was the Carl? Who was actually pushing for this case to be reviewed? I don't want to misspeak. Was it the NAACP or something?
Yeah, it was an NAACP. Originally was pushing for the case to be reviewed. I think the Lower Merion Police Department did their own internal investigation to see if the officers that were involved, violated any policies or anything like that. So eventually, I think it came out originally after the investigation, the internal investigation. I think the cop received a 1-day unpaid suspension.
Oh my gosh.
Which I don't know.
It's a joke, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know what the point of that is. But then that was reviewed by, it looks like, the commissioners, and they voted to increase that to a 10-day unpaid suspension.
Right. Okay.
Again, you guys can, look at the video. You can listen to our last podcast, but that just recently came out. And of course, now the FOP, who kind of represents the police union, they're saying obviously the 10 days is way too much and way too harsh. And of course, it looks like the mainline NAACP wants harsher penalties. Surprise. Right.
And the last time that we talked about this, we had fairly limited information. I mean, we didn't have a press release. We didn't have information on her charges. We didn't have a lot of information on the original reason for the stop or anything like that. Where in this case, we now do. We actually have a little bit of body cam footage. We have some dash cam footage of the original stop when he initiated his lights and sirens. And there's a lot more information to go off of here, which can kind of give you a better picture of what happened here. So we want to go over some of the charges. We want to go over with a little bit of that. And then we're going to kind of move over into some filming rights and obstruction charges and, how all that stuff works. I guess first thing we should probably go over is what were her original charges.
Because I think when we first ran the podcast, this had just happened, if I recall. I mean, it was literally, I think we ran that first podcast. It was a couple of days after this happened. So we didn't know. I mean, obviously she was arrested. We didn't know what the charges were, but now we do. You pulled the dockets, so now you can kind of read off. Yeah,
I mean, at the time, we didn't even know her name. We just saw the footage that somebody posted, and that was all the information we had.
Yep.
But so the charges were, she had a couple of them. First one was resisting an arrest. Second one was intent possession of controlled substance by per not reg. I don't know what that means, but
that's just possession of a controlled substance by a person not registered. That just means, you're not a pharmacist or something, that you're not registered.
Okay.
To have it. So she probably had something in the car. Because the next one is possession of drug paraphernalia. So those always go hand in hand because, we don't know what the controlled substance was, but,
right.
If you have
that was a misdemeanor, it probably wasn't crack or meth or fentanyl.
Yeah, probably not. It's probably weed in a Ziploc baggie, and the Ziploc baggie now becomes paraphernalia, or you have a pipe or a bowl in there, and now that's paraphernalia. So they always go hand in hand, those two charges.
All right, and then the next charge was, and I have a question about this one, driving while operating privileges is suspended or revoked. Quick question on that. Yeah. If a cop is aware that somebody was or may be suspended, is that reason enough to pull them over? Is that probable cause, or is that something that they just have to determine for pulling them over for something else?
I think they have to pull him over for something else. I don't know, and I know you know a lot more about the technology end of it than I do. You had said something on one of these podcasts that they can run your plates and stuff while you're driving, and they know, you know, who the vehicle's registered stuff. But I don't know how they would know who's driving the car.
Right, and not only
That's
that,
up
but
to you personally, how would they know? Oh, that's Knapp. Let's run his driving record and see if he's suspended.
right.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if they can actually do that or not. But not only that, what about, you know, during the time that they seen them, between the time they were suspended and the time they seen them, that may have gotten resolved. You know, don't they have? Do they have to properly identify who the driver is through ID and identifying them, or can they just identify somebody based off just knowing what they look like? You know, that I don't know.
Yeah, and I would think that would be highly unlikely
Right. So
that they would recognize somebody and see them driving down the road. I guess it could happen. I mean, if you were, you know, a problem in the neighborhood or whatever, and the cops ever, you know, had run-ins with you 25 times, and you know they're sitting in the Wawa parking lot, and you pull up in a car, they might say, "Hey, that's that's that guy we just arrested yesterday."
right,
You
that
know?
could become probable cause, right?
Yeah, I think it could. It's an interesting question because you don't know if they're suspended, obviously, until you run, you know, you run the PennDOT records. It'll tell you right there the status of your license.
Now, if the car is registered to her and they see that the owner of the vehicle is under suspension, because the plate, I think they can run. They don't need to pull you over to run the plate. So they could, maybe that could be the probable cause. Well, I ran the registration. It was registered to somebody who was under suspension. And, you know, my probable cause is that person was driving the vehicle.
I don't think that's enough.
You don't think so? That's interesting.
No, because if I, you know, suppose, for example, you know, I have my license suspended for, oftentimes you see it for DUI or failure to pay, you know, traffic tickets or something. They suspend your license.
Right.
So I might say, look, I got a 1-year suspension for a DUI. So for that year, I can't drive. So here, James, you can have my car for a year because I can't use it, right? Or I give it to my kid.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You know, here, you can drive my car because I'm not allowed. I don't think they can just pull my car over and say, well, I know it's registered to Knapp, but I know Knapp doesn't have a license.
That's a good point. Yeah, that kind of gets rid of probable cause. Like,
yeah, I don't think they could do it. It's the same way, you know, if I'm driving your car and I get a speeding ticket, right? You're not on the hook for that speeding ticket because it's your car.
Right.
They have to show who was driving.
No, okay, right? That makes sense. Right. So, and that would be the same thing if like the car wasn't insured or registered. And like if I had a car that was uninsured, unregistered, and you decided to run to the store in that car, I'm not on the hook for that because you're the one who chose to drive it. Even though I own it.
Yeah, although you have an obligation, I know you have an obligation to keep it insured. And I think you're on the hook for that because you're the owner. It's a crime against.
We're going to go down a whole nother road here because
hold on, we got to get to the filming the police.
You're saying you have to be on the hook for insurance, but do you have to insure a car that's sitting on private property that's never being driven?
I don't think it has to be. What are you saying? Registered?
I don't think it has to be registered, insured, or anything. I mean, you see so many old cars just sitting on people's property that they probably want to rebuild or something, just aging. And I'm telling you, there's no way they're just keeping these old cars insured.
Right. And I think you're probably right. And I think though, and I'm gonna get in trouble on this one, but it can affect. And I have a friend who does a lot of this type of law. You know, we haven't gotten into limited tort and full tort, but I think if you have a vehicle registered to you and it's not insured, you automatically lose your full tort and you get limited tort. Because I've seen cases where somebody has a junk car in their backyard, right? And this is a little different, but the car technically, if it's registered, should be insured.
But you don't have to register, right?
I think you probably let the registration lapse. But obviously, you're not going to get charged with it because you're not driving it
Right.
around.
They're going to suspend your registration, but what's it matter if you're not driving the vehicle?
Yeah. No, and I think you're right. But under your scenario, I'm driving it. It's unregistered and I'm driving it. But I think if somebody's operating the vehicle, I think the owner has to keep it registered if it's used. It's a good question. We'll have to look that one up.
Yeah. All right. We're going down a wormhole anyway. All right. So driving while operating privileges is suspended or revoked was one of the other ones. The next fine or citation or charge, I should say, was following too closely, which is what we understood that there was some kind of tailgating or something, which is why she was getting pulled over.
In the first place. Yep.
In the first place. Right. And then fleeing or attempting to elude an officer. Operating permissions operated with unsafe equipment. I don't know what that means. Maybe it wasn't inspected or.
Yeah, there probably was. There's probably something that wasn't right. Maybe a taillight out or something like that.
Right. Okay. And then investigation by officer, duty of operator was the last charge. I don't know what that means either.
I'd have to look that. I have no idea
that's the way they word these. And I was saying that to you. The way they word these is so weird. Like, just tell me what I did in like normal terms.
Yeah, you have to look them up. I mean, people.
Oh yeah, you can't remember.
Obviously, if you go through the vehicle code or the crimes code, and most of these are. Vehicle code, the bulk of these are vehicle code violations. And, the vehicle code's huge. You got to go through and read it because there's so much stuff in there.
Yeah, I mean,
nobody has it memorized, but they give you the section number. So we could look up 6308.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Look at the use/possession of drug paraphernalia. It's 780-113, section A32. That tells you right there there's 32 other sections to just that crime above it.
Yeah, and if you look, see that first number is 35.
Right.
It's actually in a separate chapter. There's a drug act, which is is Title 35. So if you look, the first charge is 18, which is 18 is the crimes code. 35 is the drug act, and then 75 is the vehicle code. So they charge her with one crime. And then, the other ones, the vehicle code and then the drugs are actually a crime too, but they're under a separate section. It gets a little confusing. But this woman, she's charged with stuff. And the cops are not going to let this stuff go because, they need these charges to help their case, right?
Right, to justify anything they did.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, following too closely, that's the tailgating. I don't know, but we did see, we saw some dash cam footage, which we hadn't previously seen, and it looks as though the police are following her, and they must have their lights and sirens on.
Right.
And she looks like she's just putzing along pretty slowly.
I mean, and like we talked about in the first video, we talked about those roads in that area and how there's no shoulders, there's nowhere to pull over. And you can see in the dash cam video, she puts on her four-ways, her hazard lights as soon as the cop lights are up. And to me, I believe that's to indicate, hey, I'm not running, but I'm seeking a safer place to pull over to keep both of us out of harm.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's a pretty narrow road. She's not driving fast, right? I mean, it looks like she's, I don't know, maybe
there's a car in front of her. She couldn't even if she wanted to.
She may be driving 25 miles an hour with her hazards on, and I think you're right. I don't think that charge is going to hold.
I couldn't imagine that charge holding, but the tailgating, I don't know. Okay, so that could hold up. But my question is, how did we get from tailgating to I got a gun in your face? Because it went from I'm lighting you up because you're tailgating. I'm following you, assuming that you're fleeing with your four-ways on, and then you pull over. I get out of my car as the officer and put a gun in your face until I assess the situation and then go to non-lethal. But that was a pretty aggressive response.
They were wound up. I mean, the police were wound up pretty quickly on this thing. Yeah. And the one article we read, it said, and again, we don't know what happened. I'm just reading the article, but it said that she originally stopped and then took off again.
We don't. Where he lit her up, there was a stop sign.
Yeah, we don't see that in the dash cam. So I don't know if she pulls over, the cop pulls up behind her, then she takes off again.
And that's the thing. Without all the footage, man, the media is going to try and spin the best story out of it. So it is possible that she pulled over and then took off again, and they're just not showing us that part so that they
Well,
can, control the narrative.
Well, you're exactly right. And when we had originally seen this, and we're going to touch on the filming of this whole thing, right? But right, without the all of the video, it's very difficult to tell what the heck happened, right? We don't really see from start to beginning on this. We see the cops; they're pretty wound up in this Wawa parking lot, and that's the thing everybody saw, and that's what we did the original podcast on.
Right, and I think that's
We don't know how it got there.
That's a really good segue into the whole filming thing. Well, I do want to talk about filming the police, but before we do that, I want to talk about their body cam footage. And I'm totally fine with saying that you and I are working on something with body cam footage for a civil matter, trying to obtain some, and it is a nightmare. It's a headache trying to do. But you had pointed out to me in one of our conversations that if I or anybody, because in our case it's a civil matter, it's not like a criminal charge type thing, but if somebody is charged with a crime, then they have access to any body cam footage that recorded that crime. So they would have access to that body cam footage without needing to request it. Yeah,
they will get it in what's called discovery. In a criminal case, a criminal defendant gets discovery, which means basically you get any evidence that the police or the district attorney's office has against you, including they're supposed to turn over what's called exculpatory evidence, right? Which would be exculpatory evidence is evidence that shows that you're innocent. Right. They can't just turn over, hey, this is the stuff we're going to use at trial because it shows that you're guilty. Right.
Right. They can't cut and modify it. Right.
Yeah. They have to give over everything. So some of this woman is going to get all this footage in discovery and you're going to see the initial stop. You're going to see, like you said, right now, maybe they're controlling the narrative because people make decisions based on the evidence they see.
Right.
Well, there might be some other evidence that comes out that shows, that this woman pulled over right away and then, they told her to move up or she drove slow, which would be exculpatory, which would clearly show she wasn't fleeing.
Right.
But she will get all that automatically in discovery. Now, the case you and I are working on, I mean, we're just trying to get some body cam footage, and it's not that easy. Right? Everybody says, well, the cops, you get the footage, right? You get the body cam footage, but you asked for it and they basically said no.
And and I'm okay talking about a little bit of that scenario. It is a civil matter with a family member of mine who was having some civil issues with another family member, and when the police showed up, they had their body cam footage on. And in the interest of preserving information for a potential future civil dispute or case, I wanted to try and get that body cam footage from them. And they basically said that, there's an investigation going on here, which, we can debate that all day. But that was their claim. So then the next process in that and trying to obtain that body cam footage was filing an appeal. And having it's a petition for judicial review.
Yeah, right. Which is an appeal because the original request gets handled internally. So, and I think we'll do a full podcast on this once this all shakes out. But right, you say to the police department, hey, I would like the footage from this date and this time and this incident.
Right.
And then the police write back, as you say, and they go, well, there's an ongoing investigation. You can't have it. End of story, right?
Right. And that's where my argument comes in.
And then we have to then file an appeal to go in front of a judge and say, Judge, we don't believe there's any. I mean, this incident happened 4 months ago?
Yeah, December 9th.
And there was no crime, just so people know, but there could be a lot of reasons. I could see a reason, like if you had a custody dispute.
I'm sorry, can I just want to run that back, because you said there's no crime, just so people know. The police weren't even called out because of a believed crime. The police were called out for a civil dispute. It was basically almost like a landlord-tenant type situation. Mm-hmm. Where both parties involved had the right to be there, and there was no crime committed, there was no crime accused. And the police left it at that as a civil matter. But then they,
Right.
part of their denial was that there's an investigation. Well, in order for there to be an investigation, there has to be a suspected crime. And that's the problem that I'm running into is
Yeah.
I'm getting, stonewalled by, I guess the politics of the police department. I don't know.
Yeah, and I could see I could see scenario, and this kind of falls into your scenario. Suppose there's a custody dispute, right? And I go to pick up my kid. It's my day today. So I go to my ex-wife's house and I bang on the door and I say, I would like to, I want the kid. And she says, screw you. I'm not giving you the kid. So I call the police. And again, the police generally don't do anything, but they might come out and they're going to say, all right, let's talk to her. And let's talk to him. And maybe when they're talking to her separately, she says, you know what? I'm not giving him the kid, because he's whatever. And you know what? We're leaving for Florida at the end of the week, so he's not going to see the kid anyway. Right. I suppose that's on the footage, right? The body cam.
Well, sure.
Now,
and everything right there. There was no crime committed, but those statements.
No crime committed, but those statements. If I'm going to go into custody court, those could be huge, right?
Right, exactly.
Like that could be huge, extremely important evidence.
Yeah, that could make or break a case.
Yeah, correct. We're not saying the police did anything wrong. We're just saying, look, that admission on video is huge, and that's kind of what your case is in custody. But it's the same thing. Like the evidence we're trying to obtain may be very helpful in the civil dispute.
Exactly.
Right?
If one ever unfolds, right. And it's kind of a protective measure. And they're just making it a nightmare to get. So we're going through the process of going through a judicial review and hopefully having a judge review it. But I think one of the important pieces to this is when you file to obtain body cam footage and then they deny you, my argument to that is, okay, I was denied. And let's say it's because they claim there's an investigation going on. Well, that doesn't mean that because there's an investigation, I don't have a right to the footage. That just means I don't have a right to it right now. And my argument is that you should save that footage. And when that investigation's over, I should have the right to access it.
Yeah. And one of the things we're going to ask for, obviously, is if there is an investigation and, how do we know if there's an investigation? Right.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now it's getting.
That's the other problem, right? They say, well, there's an investigation. And we say, but we don't think there is. And they go, well, there is.
Right. And then you're sitting in front of a judge and somebody's got to figure it out.
Right. But then our next, we might say to the judge, hey, judge, if there is an investigation, okay, we'll tell them to preserve the footage and then tell them to notify us when the investigation's over.
Right.
Like, how would we ever know if it's over?
Right. And that's what they're banking on, that, you forget about it and then it gets deleted and nobody ever ends up getting it anyway.
And it disappears. And it's so, getting back, like this whole thing that we're watching unfold with this woman getting, pulled over and getting tased. The only reason we're seeing any of this is because some people were filming this on their cell phones. This was not body cam footage we were looking at. Somebody standing in the parking lot at the Wawa filming all this.
Right. And that brought up the conversation of, the right to filming in public. Honestly, sometimes your interactions with the police, it's a lot better if you just film it yourself, in my opinion, because you're going to have a nightmare of a time trying to get it from them. If you just film it yourself, you have it.
Yeah, that's the point. Like you may not get it. This woman will get it, but the only reason she's getting it is because she's charged with a crime. She'll get it through discovery, as we said. But yeah, she probably doesn't have it now.
Yeah, if they wanted to release her from all those charges, then they could withhold the body cam footage.
And probably, and then she could say, then she could file an appeal and see if she can get the footage, and they may release it, they may not. Some of it was released, looked like voluntarily, because there looks like some of it we did see. But again, they're releasing dribs and drabs, right? They're
just releasing what they want us to see. Yeah, I want to see it too, the whole thing nonstop.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of these people like show me the whole thing, right? And I'll make a decision. I don't want you to show me, if there's 10 hours, I don't want you to show me 10 minutes.
Right. Don't show me the shiny side. I want to see all of it.
And then say, well, the other stuff doesn't really show anything.
Right.
Well, I'll decide that, right? Let me see it.
And I think this opens up a good conversation. So I guess my direct question to you would be, do you have a right to film police?
You do. You have an absolute right to film the police in the operation of their duties because they're public servants, and there's case law. There may even be Supreme Court case law that says that you have the right to film police officers because they are public servants.
Right. And that,
So
that was always
that's
my understanding.
yeah,
Uh,
and that's look. They don't like it.
No. And this is something I've
And
dealt with a lot, because I'm a photographer and I used to
right,
chase vehicle accidents and try and sell them off to the news and stuff like that. And I'd run into police all the time that were like, get out of here. You can't be here. Blah, 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 blah. All the time I'd run into that. And one of the things they would say all the time is, well, I'm going to charge you with obstruction, or I'm going to charge you with disorderly conduct. They're always trying to use these intimidation factors, but it's for somebody who's less knowledgeable, that's going to work. But for somebody who knows the law, they're going to realize, well, this is an activity I have a right to do, which can't be a crime. You can't turn that into a crime unless I'm breaking the law blatantly. But
right, and it's not, you're not obstructing anything by videoing the police arresting somebody or interacting with somebody. Clearly, that's not obstruction of justice. But you're right. If you don't know that you have the absolute right to do it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I better stop, right?
Right, their intimidation is going to work on you.
It's the same way we talk about when the police say, can I search your vehicle, right? Well, a lot of people are going to be like, well, sure, I guess. I guess you have the right to do that.
My first thing would be, well, I was just pulled over for speeding. What's that got to do with what's in my car? Like,
yeah,
no.
you're a little more aggressive when it comes to
It's funny too, because I don't even do anything like I don't do drugs. I don't even drink. I don't do anything that would be a cause of that, but I don't need a cop. When I was younger, I had a cop go in my car because I was young and dumb and didn't know the law. And I let him in my car and he tore the thing apart. Literally took the vents off the car, like tore this thing apart, and there was nothing in my car. And then I had to go home, clean the car, repair the car, and do all these things. It was just a nuisance that I didn't need.
Yeah. And I know you have filmed the police, right? You've been pulled over.
Yes.
And you film them, right? I've seen some
generally
of the
always film them. However, I do it in a courteous way. I don't just hold my phone up in their face. I don't try and act different. I just let the stop happen the way it's supposed to, and I just make sure it's filming and keep a camera on it. And there's been times where I've pulled up to a vehicle accident to try and get some photos of it, and cops have told me, "Look, get out of here. You're going to be arrested." And I tell them, well, no, I'm not. I'm on public property. I'm filming you in the course of your public duties, and I'm standing at a reasonable distance that wouldn't interfere with your work. So I'm sorry, I'm not leaving, but I will try and stay out of your way. I always try and be courteous, but I don't let them intimidate me out of there.
Have they, and I know you used to go, because you are a photographer or videographer, you would go to accidents and stuff like that, or disturbances. Have they ever told you you can't film? Have they ever told you to shut the camera off, or like when you were pulled over and I've never done it, so
surprisingly,
I don't know.
being pulled over has been the most relaxed when it comes to filming. They generally just don't seem, in my experience, and I don't get pulled over that much anymore. I used to for like window tint and stuff, but they never really address the camera. A lot of the times I would get it in during like a fire scene or a vehicle accident, something of that nature. I've been to one or two fatal accidents where out of courtesy they asked me not to film like the bodies or where the bodies would be, because they always cover them up.
Right.
And out of courtesy, of course, I wasn't interested in that anyway. But at the same time, it was a request. It wasn't a demand. Hey, just out of respect for the family and who might see this, just don't film the bodies. Of course, I'm not going to do that. But I've never been straight told delete that footage or get out of here. I have been told, hey, you can't do that. Get out of here. I mean, and like I said earlier in the scenario, public property, I'm not interfering with you. Police can create a sense of privacy. I mean, look, if they have a crime scene, they can put yellow caution tape around it, and then that creates your wall. You can't cross that yellow caution tape. But if there's no crime scene established and there's no caution tape, then there's really no boundary other than as long as you're not in their way, you're not interfering. I mean, you can't get between them or walk up to the police car that a suspect's in. Like, you can't do that stuff.
Sure.
There's a reasonable amount of access you have, and you have to respect some boundaries. But yeah, I've never been asked to just delete footage, and I wouldn't do it anyway.
No, and I think, look, I think they should be. I think you should have the right, and you do have the right to record this stuff. And I think a lot of times, like if this wasn't recorded by this, these citizens standing in the Wawa parking lot, a lot of this we wouldn't even be talking about.
Yeah, it would have been brushed under the rug.
A lot of it you just wouldn't, because the police wouldn't be releasing this footage anytime soon showing that, the body cam. You wouldn't be getting that anytime soon. But yeah, so filming in public and filming, I mean, the other thing is filming in like a public building. You have the right to film in a public building, assuming that it's open to the public.
Well, I mean, and a lot of people conflate that, what you just said, open to the public and a public building are two very different things. A Walmart is open to the public, but it's not a public building. A library, a courthouse, a post office, these are publicly funded places, meaning that your taxes pay for it, which means it's public. So in the lobbies and the, the hallways and public access areas of those buildings, you can record. And a lot of people conflate those two. You can walk into a Walmart and record, but if they ask you to leave, you can probably be charged with trespassing for not leaving if you don't.
If you don't leave, right, and that's right. It's a private establishment that's open to the public, and you're right. That's an important distinction as opposed to a federally or state-owned building. Now there are areas in there that are not open to the public, right? Like you can't just go into, walk through the courthouse and then go back into the judge's chambers and stuff like that. Yeah.
So there's
restricted areas, obviously.
Exactly. So you can go where the public is allowed to go. Now, I understand, and some of this I've learned from you. I don't know why I'm taking the lead on this, just because I'm so into the photography rights.
You're into it, so I will let you run.
Yeah, I'm big into the photography rights. So okay, so you're allowed to be in a courtroom if you have a court hearing, or you're allowed to go into a courtroom just to observe. But what I'm trying to say is, you may be allowed to go into the chambers of a judge if a judge invites you there. That does not mean that you're allowed to go there and record. Correct. You're invited into this area. So places where the general public are just allowed to walk, such as the lobbies, the hallways, the foyers, these are places you're allowed to record unrestricted. But you can't go to behind the counters and go into the desks where the desks are and the offices. You're going to get in some trouble for that. But a lot of people run into these issues, and the first argument that the people that approach them say is, "Oh, well, you're making me scared. You're causing the disorderly conduct." And that happens all the time. I showed you a video of that happened in the Montgomery County Probation Office just last week.
Yeah, we were watching that the video, and you're exactly right that this gentleman he's got his cell phone, and he's walking through. I know where the annex is. It was up by the annex. Yeah, it was up in, I know exactly where it is. I've been in that building.
Horsham or where?
Yeah, it's in Willow Grove.
Or whatever. Yeah.
It's the Willow Grove Annex, because I've actually been up there to file. They have a branch of the Prothonotary up there. I think they do have some probation department in there. Right. But yeah, the guy was in. That's why you sent it to me, because you're like, oh, this is right around here. And the guy was videoing, and people would come out of the offices and say, "What are you doing?" Right. And he was pretty polite. He would say, I'm just, I'm
but
videoing with my phone.
What you just said is such an important piece to that, is that he would be walking around filming, and somebody would come to him and say, Correct. "What are you doing?" And that's, me and you just talked about that off the recording, is that's where then they say, "Oh, you're creating a disorderly conduct." And you had a lot to say about that.
Yeah, because this disorderly conduct, a person, and I'm going to read the statute, is guilty of disorderly conduct if, with the intent to cause public inconvenience, annoyance, or alarm, or recklessly creating a risk thereof, he engages in fighting or threatening behavior. That wasn't it. Makes unreasonable noise. The guy wasn't making noise. Uses obscene language or makes obscene gestures. Creates a hazardous or physically offensive condition which serves no legitimate purpose. So Yeah, well, we were saying the guy was walking around. He was quiet, so he wasn't making unreasonable noise. He wasn't cursing at the top of his lungs. He wasn't threatening anybody.
He wasn't even approaching anybody.
No, he wasn't even approaching anybody. And then you're right. The people that came out of the office kind of escalated it. Well, you're making me, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Tell me your name. What? And they kind of created the public alarm by coming out and confronting the guy. And then they're going to, tell him that he's going to get charged with disorderly conduct.
Right. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's completely backwards. Like there was no inconvenience, annoyance. There was nothing.
No obstructing the business, nothing.
No, until you guys came out, and then the one guy calls security on him, right? So now the security guy's out there following him, and then the other guy comes out.
And then they call the police.
And then they call the police. So like, who's causing, the public, alarm or inconvenience?
Right. It sounds to me like they created a bigger problem than what he was doing. And that's what happened at the end of the video. I don't know how far you watched into it. I watch all his videos, but it's Long Island Audit if anybody's interested. Long Island Audit, like Long Island, New York. He was doing a First Amendment audit. And what happened was the police showed up and they basically said the same thing. Look, there's no crime being committed here. He's allowed to film in here. And another argument that some of these places and facilities will have is, well, we have a policy that says no filming. That's a problem. That's a gray area for police because police don't enforce policy. They enforce law. So as long as they're not committing a crime on public property, it doesn't matter what that policy says. You can write up a policy, but it's not backed by law. It's not governed by law.
And then, well, that goes back to the Walmart. So Walmart might have a policy or that says you cannot film while in Walmart. And again, Walmart's a private company,
which is big. That's a big piece of that.
So so let's play this out because, as I said, you follow this stuff. I know you're into this stuff more than I am. So Walmart's policy is you can't film in here. So now I'm filming in Walmart. Now they call the police. Have I committed a crime at that point? I haven't. I violated their policy, but I haven't committed a crime, right?
Right. But here's the thing. If you're filming in a Walmart and they don't like it, the first thing they're going to say is stop and leave.
Correct.
Now, if you don't leave,
they're going to tell you to leave, right?
If you don't leave, you've now committed a crime of trespass.
Yes, I think it's defiant trespass, which means when somebody asks you to leave and you say, no, I'm not leaving, right? So
and the reason that works is because it's private property.
Correct. And that's the crime. And then the police can enforce that. They can't enforce the policy. Now, as we said, if there's a policy in the post office that says you can't film while you're standing in line, you can't record us doing our job while you're standing in line.
Right.
Now we're in a public building, and I don't think there's any violation of anything at that point.
Well, here's the thing. There's something called Poster 7. All right. Poster 7 is posted in every single post office. It's supposed to be posted in every single post office. And what Poster 7 outlines is it governs the federal law about the use of the property. And on that Poster 7, it says that as long as it's not for commercial purposes, you can film the lobbies, foyers, and hallways in a post office. There's nothing they can do about it. Yeah.
What's this thing? I'm going to look this thing up.
It's called Poster 7. You look up Poster 7 that governs the federal law on postal property.
Poster 7, rules and regulations governing. Yeah. Yeah, because.
You like that, huh?
Well, yeah. Look, the less time I spend in the post office, the better. Right?
I know. But I'm telling you, I know a lot about this stuff.
I was going to say, I don't know if you're standing in the post office. As soon as I get in the post office, I'm like, I got to get the heck out of here. I can't stand it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm definitely with you on that. I can probably find a copy of it and read to the section about,
So now is
filming
that, does that apply just into a post office, or would that be like a federal courthouse too?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that Poster 7 applies to post offices. I don't know beyond that, and I don't want to speak wrong on it.
Mm.
But 100% on postal property, you have the right to film, and it even says it. Now, if it's for commercial purposes, commercial is a whole different ball game. I mean, if you're making profit off of it, and I'm not talking about news, but if you're making a movie, let's say, right, like somebody wants to come in and film a movie in Ambler, well, and there's just regular citizens that are going to be involved and be in that. Well, that's a different ball game, because now you're profiting off of like the likeness of the area, and you know what I mean.
Well, how about this guy who does the YouTube videos? He profits off them.
Sure, but he's doing it under the right of freedom of press. He's doing it for news gathering and news dissemination.
But he knows he's going to make money, right?
Sure, but I don't think that's
he knows
the same
he's
as
going to get a
commercial.
million views and he's going to make money on it. So I think it's a little. I'll play devil's advocate, right? I think it's a little disingenuous, right? I know if I go into the courthouse and I start recording things, the odds are somebody's going to get pissed at me and maybe throw me out or beat me up or tase me, right?
Right.
And then I'm going to put that on YouTube and I'm going to get, 10 million views and I'm going to get rich off it. And I think a lot of people do that, quite honestly. I think a lot of people film knowing or hoping that they're going to get something that goes viral.
Yeah,
right?
and you know what? I don't support those people. I don't support the people that go out there and essentially instigate.
Right.
And try and bait people. No, that's not okay. But poster 7, let me read this to you real quick. It says photographs for news purposes may be taken in entrances, lobbies, foyers, corridors, or auditoriums when used for public meetings, except where prohibited by official signs or security force personnel or other authorized personnel or a federal court order or rule. Other photographs may be taken only with the permission of the local postmaster or installation head. So other photographs would be probably if they want to get like the logistics behind the scenes, what's going on, like in other accessed areas. Right. But in the lobbies, foyers, corridors, and auditoriums, you're allowed to.
But it says except where prohibited by official signs or security force personnel.
Right.
That almost sounds like they can overrule the whole thing by putting a sign up that says no filming.
Well, yeah, but no, because it says maybe taken in entrances, lobbies, foyers, and corridors. So if there's anywhere else beyond that has a sign, then you can't go beyond that point. That's the way I look at it. Yes, I can see your argument for sure.
I read it except we're prohibited by because in that case you can just wipe out somebody's First Amendment rights with a sign.
Right, but you can't have a sign that violates somebody's rights. It won't hold up. Yeah. There is a case, this same guy that we're talking about, he did this in Danbury, Connecticut, and he went up against the city hall, and he ended up, as far as I remember, he ended up winning that based on this exact poster. Like,
oh really?
It was upheld, and what happened was the postmaster came to the property and said, "Look, he's allowed to be here. He's just not allowed to go behind the counters and into restricted areas, but the public lobbies and foyers and all that, he is allowed."
Yeah.
And it held up.
I get it. Nobody wants somebody standing in their face with a camera, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
It's intrusive, but I get it if you're out in public. Or
let's say like I'm out there and I'm filming something, my kid's doing something funny and cute, and I'm inside and I'm trying to film them doing it. My intention is not to film the other people; it's to film my child. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always got a little weird, because when you start filming children, right, and you start filming other people's children, right, like, you take your kid to the park and your kid's, I don't know, playing around in the park, right, but there's other kids playing in the park too,
right,
and if you're sitting there videoing it, obviously you're getting other people's kids in the video, and I could see a scenario where, say I'm a pedophile. And I
take a charged one or just one that hasn't been found out yet.
One hasn't been found out yet, right? Okay. So I take my puppy to the park, right? Because I know all the little kids are going to come running around the puppy, and I'm going to video it all, right? And who knows what I'm going to do with the video? But now it kind of we don't know what the guy's intent is. But I feel like that kind of, videoing other people's kids kind of troubles me, right?
I mean, look, it troubles me. It's disgusting, and I don't think anybody should do it. But at the same time, your scenario that you just explained, I don't think there's a crime being committed.
I don't think that there is either at that point. Now, depending on what I do with that video, it then can become a crime.
Which
I
is what?
think. Well, it could become child pornography.
Well, not if they're not
Depending on
nude.
well, I guess it depends on how much is exposed or not, and I don't want to get too detailed, right? But suppose kids are in their bathing suits.
Look, I don't agree with
that
any of
change
this,
things?
but at the same time,
No,
I still
no,
don't think there's a
look,
crime.
as you say, we like to play this whole lawyer. You can see my brain unraveling.
Yeah, no, I do, but I don't like the topic.
Keep going down the path. At some point, you go over the path, and it's like, hold on.
Look, I don't think that I still don't think there's a crime committed. I think you got a really foul, disgusting person, but I don't think that any crime was committed.
Yeah, so like, suppose I'm at the swimming pool with my 5-year-old daughter, and there's some guy there, some single guy, and he's recording her, in the outdoor pool, whatever. It's a public pool. I'm going to have a major problem with that, but you might be right.
I'm going to have a major problem with that too, but I don't. Look, I think if there's a little kid in a bathing suit running around at a pool and this guy films it, I think even if he goes home and watches the video for his own reasons, I still don't think he committed a crime. I think he should be shot, but I don't think he committed a crime.
Well, we agree on the shot part, but
Yeah.
and this is becomes we always call it the slippery slope, right? I'm a big First Amendment guy. I'm a big look. Your constitutional rights are your constitutional rights. I may not like it, right? But that's the whole idea behind it. It protects rights that you have.
Right.
And if he has the right to film, he has the right to film. I don't. Particularly
let's change that scenario from a child to an adult. What if somebody's at a pool filming an adult swimming around? You got a problem with that? Do you think that's illegal?
Well, I don't think it's illegal, but it's. I think it's in the gray area, right? Suppose you go to the pool with your girlfriend, right? Your girlfriend's in a bathing suit, a bikini, or whatever, and there's this dude over there, and he's just videoing her the whole time.
I mean,
she's out.
What is voyeurism? Is there a voyeurism charge?
She's on the beach, suppose, public beach, public access. I think voyeurism, you have to have an expectation of privacy. So I think that's looking in somebody's window, right?
Okay. All right. A person is guilty of voyeurism if, for the purpose of sexually arousing or gratifying himself, I don't know why it doesn't say themselves, he, I should say they, trespass or otherwise surreptitiously invades the privacy of another to spy or eavesdrop. Okay. Yeah. So you're right. That's violating somebody's expectation of privacy. In a sexual format. Right.
If you're peeking in the window of the female locker room or whatever, that's different though. But that's not somebody out on the beach. And I guess you don't have any expectation of privacy if you're walking down the beach with a bikini on.
Yeah, you're in public.
You're public. And if some creeper is videoing it, then he's videoing it. I don't think.
I think he has the right to do it. I think he's weird, but I don't like kids. I don't like crimes against kids. I absolutely hate talking about that. I hate crimes against kids.
Well, people that mistreat children, women, and animals just bother me. Right? To no end, because I'm with you. Like if you mistreat kids or even people that abuse animals, and me, I'm not a big animal lover, but it's wrong.
Wrong. Sure, but you still have morals that you don't want to see something harmed. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Like it's a living creature. Like you don't beat a dog or shock a dog or whatever.
Right.
But we digress a little bit.
Anyway, the point is, you can film in public, and I think this person who filmed this scene was exercising a right, and I'm glad that they did, because in this scenario, this may have benefited this person, because this may not have ever come to light if that footage was never captured.
You're right, and I think, look, I think it's good to have stuff like this. Look, police officers work for us, right? And I think I've said it, a million times. I'll say it again. It's got to be a tough job. I wouldn't do it. I would never do it.
Especially in today's day. Like, no.
Yeah, and look, people are watching everything you do, so you got to know they're watching you, right? There's cameras everywhere. There's people filming everywhere, so you got to be on your best behavior all the time. And the problem is you get in these high stress, adrenaline filled situations, and maybe you got to make split second decisions, right? Like, I don't know if this woman, I don't know what she's doing in the car. I don't know if these cops think they're going to get shot. They don't know if she has a weapon. She's not complying.
Well, that was one of the things I said to you off air is that, traffic stops, one, we already know is the most dangerous part of a cop's job. But what I said to you off air is when she put on her four ways and she was not pulling over, oftentimes you'll see somebody do that and they'll be phoning somebody ahead, ready to pull up to a house, ready to pull up somewhere where the cop could essentially get ambushed. So there is a piece of me that could understand part of this cop's reaction, not all of it, but some of it in the matter of being fearful and not knowing what's going on. But I think that he did pull his gun out, go to gunpoint. But at some point he did decide, okay, this is too much. I've assessed the situation. I'm going to pull a taser out instead. It's a weird case, and I'm not totally for the girl, and I'm not totally for the police. I think that there is probably some overlap on both.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think she handled it right either. The guy orders her out of the car a couple times and she doesn't comply, right? Which, and I know
that
we covered
present it fearful to me.
Yeah, I know, but you're kind of escalating things, right? And I get it. Like, sometimes cooler heads have to prevail, right? Cops don't like their authority questioned,
right?
And I'm not saying you give up your rights, but sometimes, look, you got to be careful, right? Because she's darn lucky, she got tased and not shot, right?
Oh my God, yeah. And it's horrible to even say that, but yeah.
No, look, people get shot in the spur of the moment because, these guys are making split second decisions and, I don't want to get shot, right? I like having my rights and all.
Sure.
But I'm not I don't want to get shot to prove a point.
And you got to remember, this isn't that cop's first stop. So we don't know what his previous experiences with stops were. So that may have been why he was more on guard. Luckily, nobody did get shot, but.
Right. I mean, it happens. She makes a movement. She goes in the glove box, to grab, her registration out. But, the cop sees something in there that he, in a split second, he thinks it's a gun.
Right.
That's how people get shot. Like, I'm all for your rights, but like at some point you got to say, look, I'm just going to de-escalate this situation. And I think the cops I think both parties are a little guilty on that.
Right.
But yeah, the good news is a lot of this is on film and it's all going to come out. We're going to see both ends of it. We're going to see the dash cam. We're going to see the body cam.
Right. Luckily, it was brought to light.
Yeah. And that may help the police, quite honestly.
It might protect them. I mean, look, the footage can protect either party. It might protect both. It might show things on both sides that shouldn't have happened. And then, out of that becomes change. You correct the policies, you correct the training, the police behavior, how to respond to these things. I mean, it's unfortunate that this person had to be the one that created that change through this incident, but there will be change as a result of it. Sure.
And look, there's going to be a civil suit. I'll tell you that. If it hasn't already been filed, I'd be pretty.
I think she's got a pretty good civil suit on her hands.
You show the right jury this video, it just doesn't. It doesn't look good.
I wonder if it's the same law firm as the lady who was on the scene saying I'm a lawyer, because she just got promoted. If that's the case,
we never found that lady. Remember?
I would love to find that lady.
Yeah, at the very end of the first video, that this lady comes over and she was filming too, right? I don't know if she was the one.
The girl's like in the back of the police car, and the lady's like, "I'm a lawyer. Here's my business card." Like
that was great.
That was good. Yeah, that was good marketing.
People love about lawyers, right? Like,
yeah.
Trust me, I'm a lawyer. Yeah, right.
Anyway, I think that pretty much wraps up today. We're coming up on our end time. I don't think you have anything else to add, I would assume, Carl.
No, I think we covered that one pretty well, and we'll keep you guys posted. Look, I want to see what happens with her criminal case. It's going to be a long way down the road. I'm just looking. She's going to be arraigned this week. And then, probably going to be another 6 to 8 months before this stuff gets resolved. So
Yeah, or even looked at, really. But
yeah.
anyway, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys are interested in doing a consultation, as I say at the end of every podcast, all of Carl's information is at the end. Just listen through for his email and phone number. Shoot him a call, shoot him a text, shoot him an email. Get your consultation set up, and we'll see you guys next week on the next podcast.